there and a very good morning from Singapore. I'm Babita Sharma. It's 8 a.m. on Monday here in Singapore on the 11th of June, where we're counting down to what's billed as a truly historic summit.
And I'm Rico Hizon, and all eyes are on this tiny city-state where President Trump and Kim Jong-un are set to meet face-to-face, an event that could change the world. Welcome to our special coverage here on Newsday.
The key players are now in place. Donald Trump touched down in Singapore, saying he felt very good about the talks. Kim Jong-un arrived before him. North Korea says the summit will discuss denuclearization and a permanent and durable peace.
With the world's media watching their every move, the question is, can the two sides find enough common ground to reach a deal? And in other news, from smiles at the G7 summit to a war of words, the U.S. accuses Canada of bad faith and backstabbing.
This is BBC World News. It's Newsday.
Welcome to Singapore for this special edition of Newsday on the eve of the historic summit between US President Donald Trump and the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. Both men are already here preparing for the big day tomorrow on Tuesday, and it will be the first time a sitting US president will meet a North Korean leader. The White House hopes the meeting will begin a process that will lead to Pyongyang giving up its nuclear weapons.
Kim Jong-un, for his part, wants security guarantees, respect on the global stage, and an end to the international sanctions in order to build the economy. North Korean state media is now reporting that the two leaders will discuss a way of creating permanent and durable peace and denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. Our correspondent, Laura Bicker, begins our coverage.
The waiting is over. The hard work starts now. Donald Trump has arrived in Singapore to try to do a deal that has eluded past US presidents. He hopes his unconventional political style will persuade Kim Jong-un to disarm.
I think within the first minute, I'll know. Just my touch, my feel, that's what I do.
The North Korean leader doesn't look like he's feeling his way. Considering this is his debut on the world's diplomatic stage, he looked calm and relaxed as he discussed his hopes for peace with the Singaporean Prime Minister. He's taking no chances with security. His hand-picked bodyguards have flown with him, along with his bulletproof limousine. Thousands took the chance to catch a rare glimpse of this usually reclusive leader. If Mr. Kim is trying to transition from nuclear-armed dictator to global statesman, this summit's offering him the perfect platform. At this church in Singapore, South Koreans pray for the possibilities this may offer. And tears for the years of war their peninsula endured. Some have criticised South Koreans for being overly optimistic about this meeting. But after a year of brinkmanship, most see the summit itself as progress.
There's a Korean saying that the first spoonful of food will not make you full. I know the summit will be the first step towards much bigger changes. So even if the results aren't significant, I'll be thankful.
While every detail is being dealt with on the island where they'll meet, no one's really sure whether they'll be in this secluded spot for 2 minutes, 2 hours, or even 2 days. The hopes of nearly 70 million Korean people lie here. It's their best chance of peace in decades, and it's fallen to an unpredictable US president and an untested North Korean leader. Perhaps the calm waters of this luxury resort will compel them to take tentative steps towards a deal. But rarely has there been a summit with higher stakes and greater uncertainty over its outcome. Laura Bicker, BBC News, Singapore.
poring over the details, of course, but we're still yet to find out what is happening in those talks. We're a little low on the substance there because not much has been said by either camp so far, other than the rhetoric we've been hearing for a number of months now leading up to this summit that is finally on, of course. Singapore very much on the global stage, playing host to these historic talks tomorrow. And it's about 29 degrees here this morning. Hot, humid, and very sweaty are the words that probably sum up how we're feeling today. But you know what? It doesn't take away from how resplendent the skyline is looking here in Singapore. You join me in the heart of the financial district here, where many of the world's companies are based here. Trade, commerce, and of course tourism. The iconic Marina Bay Sands behind there, the hotel, the complex, the meeting place with that ship above, often referred to as Noah's Ark Hotel. And also Singapore Flyer there that welcomes thousands of people to its tourist site. And just to the other side of that, Victoria Theatre and Concert Hall as well. Pretty cloudy here and overcast, but of course the conversation is very much turning to what is going to happen here or on the island next to where we are, Sentosa. Professor Robert Kelly joins me now from Pusan National University. Welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
Hot and humid.
Definitely, especially in a suit.
Yeah, but you're still rocking that suit, so well done for you. I wanted to talk you through a couple of the informations that we're getting in the last few hours. And firstly, that this comes from Baba Pet Usher, our correspondent in DC, who's tweeted that first word to the North Korean people has been given, notifying them that Kim Jong-un is summiting in Singapore, saying that the state news agency is reporting that he will be exchanging views with the US on establishing new relations, building a permanent peacekeeping mechanism, and realizing its denuclearization. What's your reading of that?
Yeah, that's great. You know, we want the North Korean population to at least have some sense that nuclear weapons are up for debate, up for discussion. North Korea has really hyped nuclear weapons in the last 10 years. In the last couple of years, they actually wrote them into the Constitution. They've emphasized this a lot in speeches, that they're a nuclear weapons state. And now at least they're saying, well, maybe we're considering denuclearization. That's actually kind of surprising. The regime, I think, would put that out there. That's sort of a signal that maybe they're serious about this. So it's good because, I mean, ultimately they're going to have to, make sure that this thing, works at home too, right? I mean, after they've talked about nuclear weapons for 20 years, so they're laying the groundwork too.
Let's put the rhetoric aside though for a minute, and you've been talking about this in detail on Twitter, talking about substance, which we're not getting a lot of.
Right.
We've been here before, many times in North Korea. You describe it as a gangster state. So how real are we about that real term that we're hearing, world peace? Right.
So that's the problem, is if we have some kind of, even if we get some kind of deal, verification is going to be a problem. That's been problems with deals in the past, right? We know that North Korea has engaged in all kinds of mafia-style behavior in the past, so that raises all kinds of credibility and trust problems, which means even if the North Koreans do give up some weapons or something like that, and they're probably not going to give us everything like the president has been saying, but even if they give us anything, we're still going to have inspectors in there. That means cameras, that means foreigners running around North Korea's nuclear sites, maybe from the IAEA or something like that. And I just wonder if the North Koreans are going to give us that. Are they ready to actually have that? Because they have resisted this kind of stuff in the past. Verification is going to be a huge hurdle in the future.
You wrote a tweet yesterday. It's had some 20,000 likes and retweets.
It's that now? Okay.
This is particularly about a rumor that we're getting that the two leaders may meet, just those two, before the official talks get underway. You got wind of that. Just tell our viewers what you said about that.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned because normally, presidents don't meet alone with heads of state, right? And you want to make sure they have a record, right? And also because the issues here are really complex. Nuclear weapons and missile technology are really, really complex. The president has kind of more or less admitted that he hasn't prepared, right? He said it's all about attitude and not so much preparation and stuff like that. That kind of means that he's going into it, almost sort of winging it. And I think there's anxiety about, what might he say? What might he give away? I mean, does he actually know the issues well enough to actually bargain on this? I think it will be a little more comforting if staff were involved, and that's my concern.
Bad idea is what you said, I think.
I did.
Okay, we will see how it unfolds. You're going to stay with us, though, aren't you? We'll have
more
more from you in this programme. For now, though, thank you very much, Professor Robert Kelly there. And Rico, of course, the two leaders very much in their hotels, as far as we know this hour, not that far apart.
That's right, Babita. I mean, you have Donald Trump at the Shangri-La, and less than a kilometer away is Kim Jong-un at the St. Regis Hotel. And joining us now from right outside the Shangri-La Hotel where President Trump is staying is the BBC's Mariko Oy. And Mariko, we are now on the eve of the summit. What is on the agenda of the two leaders this Monday?
Well, we understand that some of the officials from the US and North Korea will be meeting in a few hours' time, possibly to come up with an agreement that they can present to the leaders tomorrow. But as for the two leaders, we don't really know what they're doing today. Of course, their summit is not till tomorrow. But also, let me clarify where I am. You can probably see Shangri-La Hotel logo behind me, but this is not where President Trump is. He's slightly just over there in the Valley Wing where the presidential suite is. We were there earlier, but we got kicked off, and then because the police officer actually said that because we don't know what time President Trump will be making a move. So this is where ordinary guests are staying. We think that Shangri-La Hotel was chosen because of its experiences in accommodating global leaders, including two former US presidents, George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And of course, this is also where many other historic summits have taken place, including the meeting between the Chinese President Xi Jinping and the then Taiwanese leader Ma Ying-jeou several years ago. And only a few weeks ago, all the defense ministers from the region gathered here for the summit known as Shangri-La Dialogue. So the hotel definitely knows how to handle the security and how to accommodate those VIP guests.
All right, thank you so much for that update. Mariko Oy joining us outside the Shangri-La Hotel. Well, let's get some other news now. As President Trump made his way to Singapore from the G7 summit in Canada, he rejected the closing joint statement all the heads of government had just agreed. It sparked huge criticism from his European allies. But President Trump's advisors defended him, saying the U.S. had been stabbed in the back following comments by the Canadian Prime Minister on trade tariffs. Here's our North America correspondent, Chris Buckler.
But we had a great time in Canada. It's a great country. I'm now going to Singapore, and I'll see you there. Thank you.
President Trump tried to sound positive as he left Quebec for a second summit, having signed up to a final joint communique, a face-saving agreement, after what was in reality a bad-tempered meeting. Inside, there had been no hiding the divides between America and the other G7 nations over its imposition of steep tariffs.
We're polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
Donald Trump responded to those remarks from on board Air Force One with tweets that withdrew America from the agreement and attacked Justin Trudeau, who he said had acted so meek and mild during the G7 meetings. In fact, he said, he was dishonest and weak.
He really kind of stabbed us in the back.
And in a series of interviews, White House advisors made clear in no uncertain terms that daggers have been drawn.
Chris, there's a special place in hell for any foreign leader that engages in bad faith diplomacy with President Donald J. Trump and then tries to stab him in the back on the way out the door. And that's what bad faith Justin Trudeau did with that stunt press conference.
America has argued that tariffs on imported steel and aluminium are needed to protect its national security. But that seems to be at the expense of age-old relationships.
The national security pretext is absurd and frankly insulting to Canadians, the closest and strongest ally the United States has had.
America's old allies have been united in sending a message to the White House. After the difficult diplomacy in Quebec, there is an open frustration with President Trump, particularly after his late withdrawal from that supposedly agreed G7 statement. Even his old friend, the French President Emmanuel Macron, has been fiercely critical. In a statement, he said that international cooperation cannot be dictated by fits of anger and throwaway remarks. The images that emerged from this G7 told their own story. President Trump out of step with the other leaders, and in his quest to put America first, it increasingly looks like America sits alone. Chris Buckler, BBC News, Washington.
Also making news today, a fire in warehouses storing Iraqi election ballots for a recount has been brought under control. Iraq's Interior Ministry says most ballot boxes are safe. The outgoing parliamentary speaker, who lost his seat, said the fire was deliberate and demanded an election rerun. Last week, Parliament ordered a recount over electoral fraud claims. Ethiopia's Prime Minister has promised water supplies to Egypt will not be disrupted by a massive dam Ethiopia is building on the River Nile. Egypt's President Abdul Fattah el-Sisi said he was close to resolving differences with Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed. The meetings in Cairo suggest the long-delayed hydroelectric project, Africa's largest, could soon be completed. And protesters in Spain's Basque Country have formed a 200-kilometer human chain to call for a vote on greater autonomy for the region. Tens of thousands of people joined hands in a line linking the cities of Sebastián and Bilbao with the seat of the Basque Parliament in the region's capital of Vitoria.
You're watching a special edition of Newsday live here in Singapore on BBC News. Still to come on the programme. What does North Korea want from the summit here in Singapore, and what is it prepared to give in return?
And we'll take a cool, hard look at what might be on the table when President Trump meets Kim Jong-un on Tuesday.
Welcome back to this special edition of Newsday live in Singapore.
We're looking ahead to the historic summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. With just over 24 hours to go, North Korean state media says the two will discuss denuclearization and a permanent and durable peace. Just months ago, the two leaders were trading insults. For his views, we're joined now by David Kang, Director of the Korean Studies Institute at the University of Southern California. He joins us now from Los Angeles. David, thank you so much for joining us. Both leaders have been quite upbeat on the eve of the summit, but in your view, what could go wrong? What are the risks?
Well, the risks on both sides are that they somehow don't hit it off and they start exchanging threats, and we're back to where we were 6 months ago. So, you know, there are very high stakes in this summit. That being said, I think both sides are pretty confident about where they're going to go, so that's why they're upbeat.
And according to Donald Trump, before flying over to Singapore, he'll be able to size up Kim Jong-un the first time he meets him and in the first minute of their meeting, if he indeed is sincere and serious about denuclearization and other issues that will be discussed during their meeting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is going to be much more a photo op, get-to-know-you session. And I think in many ways, if Trump and Kim get along, that'll be good for everyone. And that in itself, I think, would be a nice outcome, a very low-stakes, low-result outcome.
So what is the best scenario outcome, do you think, of this summit, David?
Well, again, I think, you know, that in some ways with Trump lowering expectations and with Kim Jong-un being very vague about what he's willing to give, a outcome in which both the leaders somehow like each other and they make some vague promises about denuclearization and some vague promises about a peace treaty, will set the tone for, you know, years or months of actual negotiations. I think that would be a very good outcome.
But this could just be, as you say, an expensive photo opportunity between the two leaders here in Singapore.
And yet, don't forget that 6 months ago, if I said to you that a North Korean leader would be showing how charismatic he is and zooming around and meeting people and voluntary moratorium on missile tests, people would have said there's no way. I think that North Korea, no matter what happens at this summit, North Korea is in many ways being transformed. I don't think the narrative about a crazy reclusive leader can hold anymore. North Korea is different now in our minds, and that's important, and it's different for how they will be perceived at home as well. So this is a real change by Kim Jong-un, no matter what happens.
All right, durable peace has been mentioned by the North Korean media, denuclearization. David, what about human rights, prisoner releases, economic aid? Is this going to be as well on the agenda?
Almost for sure not. I think that many of those issues are incredibly important, but Trump has made very clear that while he may raise, for example, Japan's concern about the abductees, it strikes me that from what I've seen, it would be in passing at most. I mean, Trump is concerned about the nuclear weapons. North Korea is concerned about a peace treaty. So I think they're going to stay to those two main topics.
David Kang, Director of the Korean Studies Institute at the University of Southern California, joining us from Los Angeles. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday. And now, Babita, it seems there's still mixed reaction on the outcome of the summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump tomorrow.
Yeah, it's really difficult, I think, Rico, at this stage to have any reaction because we really don't know what the two leaders are going to be discussing. I mean, Donald Trump has alluded to the fact that he'll know within a minute whether or not he likes the leader and it will be progressive talks. But by that, we don't know if there's going to be any substance to the fact of denuclearization and also a peace treaty or some kind of a dialogue, paving a way, if you like, to some kind of relations between the two, bearing in mind this is historic in the sense that this is the first time that a sitting US president is meeting with a North Korean leader. Just want to talk you through what's happening here today. We understand that the delegation of North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un will be meeting with Donald Trump's team. Let's get more on that. With me is Professor Robert Kelly, again from the Pusan National University of South Korea. Still don't quite know who's going to be in the talks today, but some kind of conversation is happening between the two teams, but not the men themselves.
Yeah, that's right. I think this is probably about logistics. We know that the symbolism is very important, you know, the flags and the setup, the iconography of it, who's walking in, who's sitting where, who's closest to the exit. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about that kind of stuff, probably almost too much, I would say. But ultimately, there's going to have to be some kind of discussion, too, about what the substance of this is going to be. I mean, if this just turns out to be a bunch of photo ops, yeah, I think there'll be a lot of criticism in the West about Trump appearing, and so I'm hoping, I think, you know, that we're going to get some kind of discussion of, like, what actually will be, you know, the subject of the negotiations if it's not just complete denuclearization.
I know you can't read into the mind of Donald Trump. If you did, you'd probably be a multimillionaire. But what do you think do you think he'll just be happy the fact that he is here, being the first sitting US president, to make history and having a conversation, and the rest is semantics?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, to give the president his credit, right? I mean, as your previous guest, David Kang, said, I mean, David's basically right. I mean, if you can get some kind of working relationship between the two of them now, here, and then maybe in the next coming months we have a couple more summits or something like that, maybe that can sort of open the door and we can get this rolling. I mean, one of the arguments for sort of like not having staff work before the summit is that takes forever, and you have years and years and years, and never goes forward, and we need to sort of like break through and have some kind of like big moment that gets this thing rolling. And I'm actually rather sympathetic to that argument. My only particular concern is that Donald Trump has said he's not really preparing, so who knows what you're going to get from that. But in principle, that's actually not a bad approach, given that in the past things have kind of stagnated.
Will a deal be done?
Pardon me?
Will a deal be done?
Here it'll probably be something symbolic, and if there's any kind of movement, it'll be minor. My guess is you'll get a declaration of principles, something like what we got at the Indo-Korean Summit a couple of months ago about sort of the importance of peace and how we're working towards that and a commitment to denuclearization on all sides. But this thing has been so thrown together. I mean, just 3 weeks ago we thought it wasn't going to happen. So my guess is that just isn't enough time to actually get into the substance of it, of them giving stuff up and how it would be moved out of the country and so on.
And of course, as we were saying, Rico, very much on news, and we've been following this for the last few months, if not longer, that we didn't know this summit was going to be underway, and the whole world has been reacting to it.
That's right, Babita, and of course, South Koreans are also watching this summit very closely. And I wanted to ask Professor Kelly, you live and work in South Korea. What is the sentiment of most of the Korean people, and how they will benefit from this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of optimism in South Korea about this. There's a lot of hope, I think, that this is leading to some kind of breakthrough, particularly because the two Korean leaders have met. Moon Jae-in met Kim Jong-un a couple months ago. I think South Koreans were also very unnerved by the language last year of President Trump, fire and fury and stuff like that. So I think there's a consensus, a dovish consensus, if you will, that's been built up behind President Moon to keep pushing this through.
Okay, for now, Professor Robert Kelly, Dr. Robert Kelly. We've got to work out which one you prefer most, don't we?
Bob's fine.
Bob's fine. Thank you so much. I know you're going to be with us throughout the day, and of course as we lead in, counting down to the summit as well. But for now, thank you so much for that. And Rico, that is really the sense now that the clock is ticking. 9 a.m. is when the official summit gets underway, and we will have more details and comprehensive coverage for you, of course, every step of the way here on BBC World News.
And thank you so much for joining us for this special coverage on Newsday. I'm Rico Hizon together with Babita Sharma. We'll see you again soon on Newsday. Bye for now.